Today I found this little note in my house, and the note says, "I know what you did last summer." And I'm actually very glad for the person that wrote that letter, because with my short-term memory, I don't remember it at all. Hello everyone, I'm Jay Mere and welcome to another Talk About video. And this is the kind of video that I do from time to time when I have a need to talk about a specific topic of a film or to talk about a selection of a film. Today I'm gonna talk about a selection of films, because in this video I want to talk about last summer, and I do not want to talk about literally last summer and what I did last summer. No, I want to talk about the movies I know what you did last summer. And this is actually, at this moment, still a horror trilogy of movies starting in the 90s. And if you go back to the 90s, which was a very interesting decade for horror movies, not per se for slashers, because at the start of that decade, the slasher genre was a bit dead or was dying. There were still some slasher movies, not that successful. I'm not talking about the death of the horror genre, because we still had a lot of great horror movies in the early years of the 90s. With the slasher genre, there was little interest anymore in the 90s after the golden age of the 80s. And then in 1996 we got Scream. And Scream, I said this before in other videos and it's probably common knowledge, Scream was a game changer for the slasher genre. It made the slasher movie popular again. It made the slasher film fresh again. And logically, after a successful slasher film, there are gonna be other slasher movies imitating the success of that slasher film. That happened with Halloween in the 70s, it happened with Friday the 13th. Once a popular slasher film emerges, there are gonna be a lot of movies similar to that original movie. So in the 90s, we had Scream. And Scream is a fantastic franchise. It's my favorite horror franchise. And there were some other movies that were trying to be like Scream. Most failed, but there are two other horror trilogies from the 90s that are similar to Scream but are actually very successful in their own way. And I'm talking about I Know What You Did Last Summer and Urban Legend. And I'm a Scream fanatic, and I really enjoy Urban Legend, especially those first two movies. Those two movies are fun slasher movies. And then we have I Know What You Did Last Summer. And when I first saw that, I was not really a big fan of I Know What You Did Last Summer. I really had troubles to get into the story, into this movie. And especially the sequels, I did not really care for them. So, seeing that these movies are like Halloween, taking place on a holiday, this time they are taking place on the 4th of July, the American Independence Day, and today it's July the 4th, so I did a little rewatch of the first two movies. I'm not going back to the third movie, I will explain why a bit later. And I had to say, I actually had a blast watching those first two movies. They were actually very entertaining, very enjoyable slasher films. And I really love slasher films. And I don't know, I have like this whole new view on the I Know What You Did Last Summer franchise. And it all started in 1997, my birth year. The movie I Know What You Did Last Summer came out. And the end of the 90s was a very productive year of screenwriter Kevin Williamson. Kevin Williamson is a screenwriter that wrote the first Scream movie. He also wrote the second Scream movie that came out in 97 as well. And he also wrote I Know What You Did Last Summer. So he really was the engineer of this new popularity of the slasher genre at the end of the 90s, early 2000s. And You can tell by watching these movies that I Know What You Did Last Summer is like Scream, but not like Scream at all. They are trying to be Scream, but they are also very much their own thing. And the first movie has an interesting premise, because it all starts with these four people. I think they are just graduated at high school and going to the first year of college. And these people, during the summer, during the 4th of July, they accidentally run over a guy. And because they all have a beautiful future ahead of them, they decide, with some arguing, that they have to dump the body in the river. And so they do. And they form a pact to never speak about this again. Then we go 1 year later, and there is some killer going after them. And first of all, these four people are played by really good actors. They really fit the role so perfectly. They are really 90s actors, I would say. We have our main final girl is played by Jennifer Love Hewitt. We also have Sarah Michelle Gellar, who was at that time already popular because of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. We have Freddie Prinze Jr. and we have Ryan Phillip. So amazing cast actually. Good premise, and then we actually kick off our story. And this was my initial problem when I first saw this movie many years ago. And that is that this movie really takes a long time to get interesting. But now with this rewatch, I actually understand this process towards the third act very, really more. And it's actually very interesting. You see there's a pact that these four people form, that they are not holding back. There are other opinions in this little group, and then they all get notes or threats from a killer that will go after them. And this really takes their time. But what I really like now about this movie is the duo of Julie and Helen, our two female of the group. And they actually form a really cool duo, investigating duo, trying to figure out who this killer is. And that's an element that is borrowed from the Scream movies. This is a whodunit movie. And like Scream, actually a very interesting whodunit movie. Towards the movie, you're also really figuring out who is this killer. What has this killer have to do with the accident? Is this killer someone related to the person they ran over, or so you are also figuring out with these two ladies who this killer is. And I have to say the male characters in this movie are not that interesting. Like Ryan Phillip, he plays the jock, a typical character in slasher movies, and not really that interesting. And also the killer, he also takes his time to really start killing. And while he takes his time, he does this really interesting things, like he gives the character of Helen a free haircut. Okay, that's very interesting. The character was not pleased with that. He takes a picture of our jock character in the locker room. He was not pleased with that either. And then he puts a dead body with some crabs in the trunk of Julie. Julie ran away, and when she comes back, the body is gone. And no one noticed this, that someone removes a body from a trunk. Those are just little things in this movie that doesn't make a lot of sense. And what I really annoy is that Julie expresses herself in the street, basically towards no one, and basically screams it out loud, "Come after me." That was just really stupid. And when the third act starts, it was very entertaining. This is really what a slasher movie should all be about. And the best scene is easily the chase scene of Helen. And back in the 90s, there were a lot of long chase scenes when there's this killer and chasing, usually a girl, towards her death. And these scenes are always very cool. So this is easily the best scene of this movie. And Sarah Michelle Gellar is actually a fantastic actress. She plays this role really perfect. You're really rooting for her. Even now that I know she's not gonna make it, I'm still rooting for her. I still hope there is a better outcome, but that is not happening. So this first movie is actually a very cool movie. And then 1 year later, they decide to make a sequel. So they did not really take that long to make a sequel. When I first saw this sequel, I really thought, man, this is a bad movie. This is a really bad movie. This cannot be worse than this. Now with the rewatch, because I really wanted to check this one out, am I still thinking this is a bad movie? And yes, it's a bad movie, but it's actually a bad movie that is very enjoyable. This time Kevin Williamson did not wrote the script, and you can tell the writing is really terrible. That is one of the reasons why this movie is so bad. Also, the new characters in this movie, they are not interesting, they are not relatable, they are just plain annoying. But we still have our survivors from the first movie. They are still good. Jennifer Lou Howitt also plays Julie very well. You are still rooting for her. The character of Freddie Prinze Jr., Ray I believe, is not that prominent in this movie, but I really like his storyline. What he's going to do this movie and get to the end, that's fantastic. And also the whodunit in this storyline is also very interesting. They are less figuring out who the killer is like they did in the first movie. So you have not the duo of Julie and Helen that was so perfect in the first movie, in this movie, to figure out things. Maybe it was a shame to kill off that character because this duo would have been great in sequels. But all in all, I actually had still a good time with this movie, and what I really like about this sequel is the setting. The setting is this island in the Bahamas, and it's taking place through a tropical storm, so they cannot escape the island, and it's constantly raining, and it gives an extra element to this movie. I hope there are gonna be more slasher movies taking place in the rain because it has something cool. So it's an okay sequel, could have been better, but okay. And just like the first, the third act, the really last part of the movie, because the third part act in the first movie was excellent till the last scenes. And this third act in the second movie was just ridiculous. So there are a lot of things to improve on this movie, but it's watchable. And then back in the day I thought it cannot be worse than the second movie. And then in 2006 we got the third movie in this franchise. I really wonder, did anyone ask for this? Because we got I Will Always Know What You Did Last Summer. And I've seen this movie also twice. Not now, I did not do a rewatch because I know how bad it is. It's a really terrible sequel. And it actually had to be just the first two movies. I'm gonna tell you why the third movie didn't work. First of all, they're all new characters. There are not much ties to the first movie except it's still 4th of July, and we have our killer, the fisherman. I have to say that's a very iconic look for a killer, the fisherman with his hook. So the killer really works. It's a very, I would say it's a 90s slasher icon. Not on the same level as Ghostface, but he is there. He is just below that. And also the editing is just terrible. If you go see a slasher movie, one of the reasons we see a slasher movie is to have kills. And every time there is a kill in this movie, they are just really messing around with the editing. So you cannot really see the kills. And also the whole plot twist on who the fisherman is in this movie, yeah, that was just complete bullshit. But anyhow, did not like this movie, and there were no sequels after this because this was just so shit. Then they decided to do kind of a reboot with a television show. Never seen it. I hear mostly negative things about it, so I'm not gonna check it out. The slasher transforming into a television show is very hard, and just a few can really manage that, and I did not expect that a show about I Know What You Did Last Summer would succeed. I'm not a big fan of the Scream television show either, so if that was not good either, why should I Know What You Did Last Summer? But there is good news. We're gonna get a reboot, probably next year, and Freddie Prinze Jr. and Jennifer Love Hewitt are returning to their roles for this new installment. So I'm very interesting to see that. So maybe we can still have a perfect I Know What You Did Last Summer trilogy with the first one, I Still Know, and the new one. So really looking forward to that. I'm really curious in what directions they're gonna take. So, and it can actually work because the Fisherman is such an icon that he can easily you can easily bring him back into new movies, and that's something that the urban legend movies are gonna struggle, because every movie in that franchise have a kind of different killer with a different look. So the Fisherman, I believe he has a future. So we will see if it's gonna bring a good movie or just one of these really terrible sequels. So let's see. So these were my thoughts on these movies. This was my talk about I Know What You Did Last Summer. Really had enjoyed watching them recently. So always be free to let me know what you think about these movies. Do you like them or do you not like them, and why? Let me know below in the comments. And if you want to see more talk about videos of me in the future, always be free to subscribe to my channel. Until the next time.